Ladies and gentlemen, if you are struggling to stay funded or even get funded, don't feel bad. This is the NASDAQ and it has been absolutely brutal. In today's video, I want to go over some charting analysis with what I'm looking at and kind of provide some comfort that if you've been struggling this year, understand that you most certainly are not alone. So, this is the daily chart. I want to chart out the highs and the lows of 2025 so far. And as you'll see, it's been absolutely insane. These wicks are nuts. The candle bodies make zero sense. It appears as if there is no flow to this chart. And if we go to the 4-hour time frame, it is much more of the same. And this has been the tale since the beginning of the year. Now, mind you, if we go back to the daily chart of the beginning of 2024, we had some of the same, but what we saw was an immediate pullback with a base and a rip up through the first quarter of the year. We have not had that. We have had nothing but sideways price action, and we have, I think, the tech and AI stocks, obviously with the NASDAQ, to thank for that. But I believe that some of that sector strength and weakness and insecurity has spilled over into the S&P 500. We're not going to get into that today. But looking at the price ranges and activities we've had so far in the daily candles puts somewhat of a bearish sentiment into my opinion for the market. Now, mind you, if we look at the anchored VWAP from the beginning of 25, which is right here, we are above VWAP. We have tested VWAP twice and we've bounced above that to move forward. So if we're looking at mere technicals, we're looking at a bullish sentiment to at least test the upper end of the range. And now, if we had a Fibonacci retracement from the highs here through the lows down here, we're already at the top of the Fibonacci extension. Obviously, the VWAP would represent somewhat of the 50% retracement. We did retrace down below that, and here we are. Moving towards the 78% retracement. Again, we're going to see how we react there today. But if we're looking to move ourselves up, I'm unsure what is going to get that done with simple price action, because if you look at what happened in the market today, we saw roughly, here's a 5-minute chart. This was the sentiment candle saying that unemployment and inflation were tough on January, but we bounced right off VWAP, the anchored VWAP from the beginning of the year, and had an insane push back up. So this has been a very interesting story in this market, and the ranging price action has been very, very difficult to trade and to follow. This is the 1-hour chart, very much the same, obviously. But the Fed announced yesterday that they do not have plans to cut the rates as fast as some people might want them to. What is that going to mean going forward? Now, mind you, we have this tariff talk going on with the Trump administration. Will that be the catalyst and the money saved there off of the deficit to bring this price action above 22,000 and to hold above it? Because we have not been able to test or hold it enough to have confirmation. We had somewhat of that towards the end of the year, but then we had aggressive selling pressure thereafter. And the market, quite honestly, has struggled to regain that. So I'm torn with where we're headed. And if I look at this on a macro level, let's just go to a macro time frame level. Let's go to the 4-hour. You can see here that we don't really have many 4-hour swings that have not been attacked or rated, whatever phrase you want to use. But the only things that are going to make sense is what we see. I want to get the right drawing tool out. I don't know why I can't find the right tool. Here we go. With what we see, I would say here, because if we get to this again, I think we're headed to the downside. Let's take another example. You've got this swing low down right here where the strong basing was. And if I clone this one more time, the next logical example would be down in this range. That being said, if we get to this point on the 4-hour chart, we are likely headed to this zone right here, which is the 19,000s. And then to get to this point, we're in trouble. If we get down here to the 18,000 level, that is an insane market sell-off and very, very unsure how that would even look. This might even take probably the entire year to get to that point. But looking at this chart tells me we have room to the downside. The upside, we have had nothing but selling pressure in this zone. We can't even get into this and hold it. We're about to retest it again, what it appears like. Very interesting to see how we react when we get to that point. Let's get to the weekly chart because I think the weekly chart tells an interesting story because yet again, we're range bound. Highs, let's clone the lows here. Okay, so this is the weekly low of 2025. We have not retested that low. This candle here was the very rough NVIDIA candle. This candle came back down and we pushed right back up after we grabbed that liquidity here. So this is very interesting when we have this zone, this right here, the first week of January, this candle grabbed that liquidity and we pushed all the way down. We did not grab the liquidity from this candle here, which was incredibly interesting to me because I thought that's what was going to happen to push this back up. Not the same. We've been range bound since the beginning of the year, guys. So as we start to push up, we're already above the prior week's open. So, I mean, the prior week's close. So we're pushing up. But how do we do as we hit this candle and this candle's open is going to be very, very interesting. Because as we are, since we get to this point right here, we have a double top on these two candle highs for the last week of December and then the first week of the year. And we haven't been able to go since, to push up beyond those since. We would likely have to see some sort of price action within this area, this consolidation zone up here, to push ourselves lower. And as you can tell, kind of talking in circles here, very unsure where we're going to go. However, I think if we grab the liquidity that is in this zone right here, I think that this will ultimately push us to the downside. I think we're going to go from here this way. I don't see economic indicators that can push us above and keep things going crazy. We already know how the government and administration feels about Trump and what he plans on doing. So, is it going to be micro movements that get this market moving? Is it going to be macro events? We're going to see. But this video, just to provide some comfort to you guys, that if you're having a struggle trading this market, this is exactly why. The price action is very difficult to read, and you almost have to switch your thesis into positioning yourself within the daily or the weekly candles at this point. So guys, that's my analysis for today's video. Hope it helped somewhat or at least provided some clarity. But if you could, share with your friends, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.